In December of 2013, Vice News went to the Central African Republic to try to understand an underreported conflict that was descending into what the United Nations called complete chaos. The week before we arrived saw some of the worst violence, with hundreds killed in the capital of Bangui. France and the African Union, already with a small troop presence, rushed in more soldiers to try to keep the peace. What started as a rebel coalition overthrowing a corrupt government was now becoming a conflict split across religious lines. In a small, mostly forgotten country in the middle of Africa, we witnessed a major turning point in the conflict. One that would lead to horrific ethnic cleansing. The Central African Republic is a landlocked country smack dab in the middle of Africa. Despite being full of natural resources like gold, diamonds, and uranium, it's one of the poorest countries in the world. After being ruled by France for decades, the country gained independence in 1960. Since then, it suffered one coup after another, in no small part due to the meddling of neighboring countries like Chad and Sudan, as well as its former colonial master, France. In 2003, François Bozizé seized power and began a 10-year reign of incompetence and corruption. Different rebel groups rose up, and by the end of 2012, a number of them formed an alliance called the SELEKA, a mostly Muslim rebel coalition led by MICHEL. The current conflict really took hold in March of 2013, when the Séléka overthrew Bozizé's government and set about terrorizing the country, raping, murdering, and looting. DJOTODIA declared himself president in April, and then proved either unwilling or unable to reign in the Séléka, the very people who helped bring him to power. In response, mostly Christian self-defense groups, called the ANTI-BALAKA, formed and started fighting back. Civilians were caught in the middle, as the fighting grew increasingly sectarian. For the past week, residents of Bangui had fled to the airport, hoping that the heavy French troop presence there would keep them protected. We're at the airport refugee camp right now. Refugees are still streaming in and out. It's really, really hot out, something like 90 degrees, and there's really no shelter in there. They have limited amounts of water, limited amounts of food, no medicine. We've heard already a baby died of malaria. Others are suffering from malnutrition. There's still a lot of fear here. You can see behind me there's a checkpoint, and people are armed with wooden clubs and machetes, and they're checking everyone that goes in and out to make sure they're not Séléka. They've said that at night the Séléka have tried to make incursions into the camp to kill more people. Doctors Without Borders, employing mostly Central Africans actually living in the camps, was the only group helping. What are some of the obstacles you guys are facing here? It just seems like you're completely overwhelmed with tons and tons of people and there's not that much help.
That's exactly the obstacle. We're the only medical facility in this camp and there's 33,000 at least. The situation is really severe. They don't have anything. They don't have water, they don't have latrines, they don't have food, they don't have shelter. They're sleeping on the ground. 30,000 people in the same spot with nothing.
And how many people are there here from MSF?
We are 6 international staff and about 20 local employees here in the camp.
And how many doctors?
3 doctors.
So there's 3 doctors for 30,000 people here right now?
Yes.
And no help is coming?
As far as I don't know. It's pretty unacceptable. It's not like they can't not know that there's 30,000 people right next to the airport. So I don't know why they're ignoring these people. They will not go anytime soon. They're saying they're still afraid. They are going to stay for a while.
That same day, Doctors Without Borders released a controversial open letter criticizing the lack of response from the United Nations humanitarian system. Things in the airport camp were bad and getting worse, and we wondered how others were coping. We had heard that makeshift refugee camps had sprung up in churches and mosques, so we headed to a local church called the Monastery of BLISS. Brother Yellen Walongo now found himself caretaker to thousands of displaced and terrified people.
Donc sensiblement, j'aurais pu dire que vous avez entre 12 et 13 000 maintenant Et dans la soirée, avec tous ces gens qui continuent de venir dormir, vous pourrez facilement monter à 17, 18 000. Bon, là, on a commencé à avoir de l'aide humanitaire. Ce n'est pas encore assez, mais on fera avec ça.
Do you support the French troops coming in here? Do you think it's a good thing?
Tout à fait. Ils sont accueillants, c'est avec joie que la population a accueilli leur présence. Donc on attend que davantage ils se déploient et que voilà, les gens puissent rentrer chez eux sans craindre quoi que ce soit de jour et de nuit et qu'ils puissent aller au travail, qu'ils puissent vaquer à leur occupation, qu'ils puissent avoir à manger et dormir chez eux et non pas dans cette boue-là. Voilà.
Many people told us before this fighting that Muslims and Christians in Bangui lived together as neighbors. Why did it happen so quickly that there was fighting amongst these people that they turned against each other?
Alors, pour ça, je vais être clair. Ce que vous avez entendu depuis longtemps, comme s'il y avait un conflit entre musulmans et chrétiens, c'est du pipeau, c'est du faux, c'est de la récupération. Il n'y a jamais eu dans ce pays depuis des années un combat religieux.
The Central African Republic didn't have a history of religious conflict, but the recent rise of the Séléka, made up of mostly Muslims, had triggered a lot of anger in the Christian majority population and given birth to the Anti-BALAKA, who blamed the Muslims for the Séléka's actions. Resentment was brewing. A local named LOREN staying at the church told us he now felt betrayed by his Muslim neighbors.
Mala fana ye ingotere so ka fulu parce que ala kola la yeda parce que tout zo la so si yanki sala alondo par ala kukundo tala we si laso iba shonida.
And in the streets, we were hearing more and more talk of religious hatred. Reconciliation seemed a distant thought, despite a heavy foreign troop presence intent on keeping the peace. It was clear that something was changing, and that something bad was building.
À présent, mon frère, presque 5 personnes à l'intérieur, mais je ne sais pas leur sort.
Oh shit!